SRT gang. It's your boy with the fat SwaggyReacts, and we are back with another reaction video, man. And shouts out to Mr. Ballen. Y'all already see the name of the title, and y'all already know what time it is, bro. Shouts out to y'all, to all the new subscribers, bro. We on the road to 100K. Hit the like button before the even video gets started. That really helps out with the algorithm. I don't know if y'all know how important that thumb up is when it comes to this YouTube shit, bro. It's very, very important to us, man. So it'd be greatly appreciated if you guys, if you're watching this video, hit the like button, please. It doesn't cost you nothing. It's literally free. It's literally free. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like let's give me 100 likes, yo. That's all I'm asking for all the Mr. Ballen fans, bro. Like if y'all rock with me like y'all say y'all do, get me to 100 likes, man. And most of all, share the video. Know what I'm saying? Or whatever. You know, these long videos take a long time, man. And I love sitting here with y'all, breaking these videos down, man. But today we're gonna be checking out like this blood cruise will calm your entire family. So like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it. I ain't gonna hold y'all up because this is it's a long video. Let's get into it, man.
Today, I'm going to share 3 stories that are about real medical cases that are totally wild. And in each of these stories, the patient or patients appear to have no hope, like they are just doomed and nobody knows why.
Damn.
But eventually, when the doctor or doctors finally figure out what was actually wrong, it turned everything the patients and their families thought they knew completely inside out. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time you're at the like button's house, go ahead and secretly replace all of their hand lotion with mayonnaise. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn.
Bro, like you just be coming up with things sitting at the house, just like, yo, like, what should we do about this like button now? But this is talking about putting mayonnaise.
Turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of. One hot afternoon in May of 1891, a 31-year-old businessman named James Hatcher rushed through the small town of Pikeville, Kentucky. And as he made his way, he could feel people staring at him, because he knew he very likely looked crazy. His hair was totally wild, his suit that he had slept in the night before was all rumpled from sleeping in it, and he was swatting at all the flies that were buzzing around his head. Flies were very common in this part of Kentucky in the spring. But right now, James did not care what anybody thought, because his only focus at this very moment was just getting to the town doctor's office, because in his hand, he held this legal document that he was sure would put an end to the psychological torture he'd been enduring ever since his wife had died. So up until very recently, James had had sort of a charmed, perfect life. Even though he was a pretty young guy, he was still one of the richest men in town. He'd made his fortune in coal and real estate, and in fact, he actually owned most of Pikeville, where he was. But more than having lots of money and resources, the real thing that had made him so happy and really fulfilled his life was that he'd had this great marriage to his wife, Octavia. And last year, they had gotten pregnant with their first child, and it just seemed like everything was coming up roses. But then 4 months ago, tragedy had struck. Their baby had died just hours after being born, and it was arguably the worst thing that had ever happened to James or his wife. That is until just last week, when Octavia herself had died. The doctor—
Oh, man. That's terrible. Rest in peace to both of those souls, man.
had told James that his wife had died from a broken heart, from losing her child. It had just been so much, it had killed her. And during—
Wait, like that's the thing? Like women in the comment section, let me know. Like that's like, you can literally die from broken, like depression type of thing. It's like depression. You know what I'm saying? Like a broken heart is wow.
the chaos of making the arrangements for the funeral and just grappling with this overwhelming grief, not only for the loss of his child still, but now his wife as well. I mean, his life is wrecked here. James had not questioned the cause of death. He had just accepted it. But after the funeral, when James was back inside of his mansion, now all by himself because his family has been wiped out here, he found himself just like unable to live. I mean, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't go to work, he couldn't do anything. All he could do was just pace around the mansion by himself, just obsessing over how in the world this could have happened. How could he have lost his child and his wife, a week apart? How could that have happened? He had a perfect life. How could this be? And the more he obsessed over this unbelievable loss, the more he began to question specifically how his wife had died. Because again, he had been told by the doctor she had died of a broken heart, but he was thinking, wait a minute, I just don't buy that diagnosis. Like there's gotta be something else. Now, of course, it was true that Octavia was completely devastated after losing her baby. I mean, she and her husband both were devastated. But people did not die of sadness, not really. I mean, they can decline rapidly, but to literally
like spiral, like into depression to the point you want to commit suicide or something. But like just dying from a broken heart is kind of like, I've never heard of that. Like me personally, I've never heard of that.
Die from a broken heart just seemed impossible. And so now the question of what really had killed his wife was all James could think about. It was like, instead of just grieving the loss of his wife and his child, it was like he needed to solve what happened to his wife for real. And pretty quickly, James decided that the only real way to figure out what happened to his wife was not going and talking to the doctor again or reading literature, about various symptoms that could have been hers and try to tie it to some disease or something. No, he realized that the best thing he could do is just go dig his wife up and have a look.
Dig his wife
Whoa.
up?
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Dig his wife up and see for yourself is what?
So James had convinced a local judge to order an emergency exhumation, to dig up his wife. And the judge had said yes, and he had given him a legal document saying he could do that. And so that legal document was what he was carrying as he hustled through town looking totally crazy on his way to the town doctor's office. Because it was ultimately the town doctor who would actually examine his wife's body once the exhumation was complete. And so James, he finally reaches the doctor's office and he bangs on the door, and eventually the doctor opened up, sort of looking at this guy who, again, looks totally wild, frumpled suit, hair crazy, flies everywhere. And he's like, hey, what's going on? And James, he just hands over this legal document, the order that says he's gonna exhume his wife. And the doctor took the order and he read it, and he kind of looked up at James with almost like a look of sympathy on his face. Like he felt bad for James. Like obviously this man's life has just fallen to shambles here. Now, the doctor was clearly prepared to fulfill this order and to look at his wife's body, but he made a point of telling James that, digging up Octavia now just was not a good idea. It wouldn't change what happened, and it definitely would not bring her back. Like, this is not the move here. But James knew all this, and he really didn't care about anything the doctor was saying because he wasn't trying to bring his wife back. He just wanted to know the truth. He had to. And so later that afternoon, James and the doctor stood by Octavia's tombstone as a pair of cemetery workers dug up her grave. And it was so hot outside that James and the doctor were sweating profusely, and these flies are everywhere. I mean, it's kind of a miserable scene here. But James, he was just kind of overcome by this sense of almost dread. Like he definitely wanted to do this, but he's realizing that any moment here after these guys dig up this grave, that he's going to physically see his wife again, his dead wife. And he didn't really know how he was gonna feel, like literally seeing her in the condition that she was going to be in, decomposed. But he knew this was the right thing to do. So he just sat there, swatting at flies, sweating profusely, just waiting. And eventually, one of the workers with their shovel, they dug into the ground and it struck something hard. It was the coffin. And so at that point, James and the doctor, they kind of leaned into the hole to look down, and one of the workers got to the side and lifted up the lid of the coffin, and inside was Octavia. But Octavia was not in the same position she had been in when she was lowered into the ground. She was sort of in this position with her hands up, and across the top, the inside top of the actual coffin, were all these deep gouges, like scratch marks on the inside of the coffin, and Octavia's nails were all flipped backwards.
Please don't tell me that she was buried alive, bro.
Shortly after James buried his wife, he's totally heartbroken. He's questioning, the doctor's diagnosis of what actually killed her. And in that period of time, over those few days after the funeral, there were several people in Pikeville that came down with a mysterious illness. They almost appeared to be dead, but it would turn out it was just from being bit by these flies that were swarming around everybody this spring. And so James, as he's thinking about his wife and what really killed her, he began to have this panicked thought that maybe his wife hadn't died at all. Forget the broken heart thing. Maybe she had just been bit by a fly and appeared to be dead, and now I've buried her. And so he had to get her up, exhume her, and check. And when he opened up the coffin, he saw he was right. She had not died of a broken heart. She clearly had been bit by a fly. She woke up.
Oh, they really just buried this woman alive. Bro, what the? Bro, that is terrible, bro. Y'all not realize how terrible that is, bro. Buried alive, and then you're sitting here scratching, trying to get
underground in her coffin and slowly asphyxiated while trying to burrow her way back out again. Shortly after James had buried his wife in the ground, in those subsequent few days, he noticed several people in Pikeville, where he lived, had come down with something they called sleeping sickness, which is something you get from being bit by one of those flies that are always buzzing around these folks' heads in this town in the spring. And, sleeping sickness sometimes can take the form of just having a fever and being very achy. But in some cases, really bad sleeping sickness can cause people to drift into a coma for several days. Sometimes they wake up, but sometimes they don't. They die. Or others, the sleeping sickness is so severe that it causes their heart rate to drop so low that they're not in a coma, but they almost give the impression of being dead. And so sleeping sickness basically mimics death and sometimes causes death, but some people do come out of it. And so James, he's seeing all these people have this illness, and he began to wonder, well, wait a minute, I'm already questioning my wife's diagnosis. What if something even worse happened? What if she wasn't even dead? What if she had just gotten bit by one of those flies and had sleeping sickness? And so in a panic, he has her exhumed, and when he opens the coffin, what does he see? All the signs in the world that his wife had not been dead, so she did not die of a broken heart. No, she was alive when she was buried, and at some point she woke up, but she was trapped, and she slowly asphyxiated while trying to claw her way out.
Bro, can they sue for that, bro? 'Cause that's kind of crazy, bro. That's crazy. Y'all literally buried my... wait. So back in the day, they didn't have, I guess, a morgue, a thing where a person, oh man, well, this was back in what? I think they said 19 something.
Must have been bit by a fly and got sleeping sickness.
What kind of flies are these? Is the real question. What kind of flies are these? I'm about to say fries.
Apparently you can go from 0 to a complete site in just a single prompt.
God, that is terrible though, bro. That's terrible, bro. Ridiculously terrible.
One morning in early 2020, a 24-year-old woman named Rosa Sanchez laid in a hospital bed inside of a national medical center in Lima, Peru. And while she lay in her bed, Rosa was sort of vaguely aware of doctors and nurses and a small group of strangers sort of leering over her, staring at her like she was some kind of medical anomaly. But Rosa really couldn't pay attention to anyone right now, because right now, she was feeling sicker than she ever had felt in her whole life. Her stomach hurt so much that it felt like, she was rotting from the inside out or something. And at the same time she was having this awful physical symptom, she was also feeling incredibly depressed and overwhelmed with guilt. So just a few months ago, Rosa had been a happy, successful college student working towards a degree in economics. But then there had been this outbreak, this sudden disease outbreak at her school, and a bunch of students, including Rosa, had gotten sick with some kind of mysterious illness that still had not been identified. And Rosa had gotten so sick, she actually had to temporarily drop out of school and move back home with her mother and father and 2 little siblings. And it was at that time that something truly just tragic and unimaginable happened. Rosa, when she came home, was still sick, and she wound up infecting her entire family, all 4 of them, and within weeks, they all died. Rosa's still alive, but her family is now wiped out from this disease that she still had. And so Rosa now is not only dealing with this horrific illness that feels like it's killing her, but she's living with the reality that, in her mind, she caused the deaths of her whole family. And so this is just like the worst possible scenario anybody could be in. And so now in the hospital, Rosa, who's sort of just totally out of it, she's racked with pain in her stomach. She could tell that a doctor had actually moved up right next to her bedside, and he began telling her some of the results from the recent diagnostic testing they had been running on her. And the doctor told her that, they had run all these blood work tests and they'd done these imaging scans, but so far everything had come back normal. And so they still didn't know what was wrong with her. However, the doctor did say that he wanted to try a different kind of test that might be able to tell them a little bit more. He explained that since Rosa's basic imaging scans had come back normal, what he wanted to do now was try a more advanced type of imaging known as a SPECT scan. Before she could even ask what a SPECT scan was, he explained to her that what it would be is she would be injected with this radioactive substance, and then after that, they would have her lie down inside of this machine that could basically trace the substance as it moved through her body. Basically, this would allow doctors to not just look at Rosa's internal organs, but to actually see how they were functioning in real time. Hearing this, Rosa couldn't help but be a little weary of the idea of a radioactive substance being injected into her body. But at the same time, her life is in shambles.
Yeah, because again, like, you don't know what them damn side effects could be. It could be possibly even death. Like, I hate to say it, but it's like, bro, like, we don't know what's going. You see what just happened to the rest of her family. So it's like, bro, like, nah, man.
Shambles, she basically knows this disease is probably going to kill her at some point, and so she was desperate enough to try anything. So she closed her eyes and just nodded yes, she would try this new scan. About an hour later, Rosa was laying on this long, thin platform right outside of the SPECT scan machine, which was like this big machine that was shaped kind of like a donut with an opening large enough for her to be basically slid in through horizontally. By this point, Rosa had already been injected with this radioactive substance, and now the same doctor who had suggested this scan in the first place stood right beside her and told her that the actual scan would only take maybe 30 minutes once she was inside of this machine. And all she would have to do during the scan was just lie perfectly still. So Rosa said okay, and then she heard the doctor leave the room. A moment later, the SPECT machine began making a whirring sound, at which point the platform that Rosa was laying on began moving, and she was brought inside of this machine, inside of the donut, and then eventually the platform stopped, and at that point she's just looking at the inside of this machine, which was just, white plastic all around her. And for a couple of minutes, as this scan began and Rosa's just laying there, being as still as possible, everything seemed fine. She had never done a SPECT scan before. But then, out of nowhere, pain ripped through Rosa's abdomen, which was already in pain, but this was a new pain. It was so severe. Like, she knew she was supposed to stay still, but she couldn't help but sort of lean forward from how much pain was in her gut. And then as she's telling herself to stay calm, she began feeling lightheaded, and she had tunnel vision, and she began to panic. She's claustrophobic. And then before long, her ears were ringing. And then it was like everything just kind of faded, her vision went black, and Rosa died. And so the doctor, he's outside of the room.
What the fuck? Yo, what are these? Yo, another life.
He's hearing and seeing in real time Rosa basically dying. And so as fast as he can, he shuts off the SPECT machine, which immediately causes the platform that she is on to automatically go back out of the machine. And so as the doctor runs into the room, he sees Rosa just lying there on this platform, outside of the machine, and she's completely limp, like she's lifeless. But the doctor was thinking the scan had actually worked. It told him exactly what was wrong with Rosa. What the scan had shown the doctor before Rosa died was that Rosa had severely low blood flow to several crucial areas of her brain. And this lack of blood flow was what had actually caused all of her symptoms. But this was actually really good news, because now the doctor simply leaned over Rosa, looked into her wide open eyes, and told her to please just go ahead and sit up, because Rosa was not dead. She just thought she was. It would turn out Rosa was suffering from two extremely rare psychological disorders. The first was known as Cotard's syndrome, and it caused Rosa to believe that she was literally rotting from the inside out, and then eventually that she died. She literally believed that she had died inside of the scanner. And the second rare psychological disorder was Capgras syndrome. It had caused Rosa to think that many of the people close to her, like her classmates and her own family members, had gotten sick and died from this mystery illness. And then they had been replaced by clones. The reality here was that
Hold the fuck up, bro. Hold the hell up. You talking about some what? Like, what is going on right now?
that there actually was never any disease outbreak at Rosa's school or in her home. The group of strangers in Rosa's hospital room were her mother, father, and 2 siblings. They were perfectly fine. As for Rosa herself, she was obviously mentally very unwell, but physically, she was never sick at all. Now, Rosa would need continued psychiatric care, but after 3 weeks in the hospital, she was able to go home with the family that she believed she had lost forever.
That's crazy to me, bro. Like
Tell Monday what you need.
like whatever drugs or
We're creating an
like disease or whatever you want to call it, blood, something, whatever y'all got going on over there. Like I'm making it my goal to not go over there. Like you just caused her, like this lady's brains just think so many different things. Like hell no. And do y'all put it like in what? A CAT scan thingy? That's what it looked like. Like no man.
In the spring of 1988, a 27-year-old woman named Severina stood in the corner of a small adobe house in the rural village where she lived in the mountains of Bolivia. The house belonged to a curandero, which was a traditional healer. Severina had come here with her 2 aunts because her aunts were sick and in desperate need of help from the curandero. So 2 weeks earlier, Severina's aunts had come down with these horrible fevers and they had been in bed for days, and they had both been so tired and so weak that they could barely move or even eat. However, despite eating, both of their stomachs had swollen up like balloons, and then the skin on the outside of their stomachs had actually turned black, almost like the skin itself was dying. And it was at that point that Severina decided that her aunts could no longer afford to just hope this goes away on its own. They needed to go see a professional, go see the local healer. And so now Severina watched as her 2 aunts were told by the curandero to lie down on these mats in the middle of the floor. And both aunts they're very weak and sick, but they lie down. And the curandero, as they're lying down, lit incense and began waving it over their bodies. And then he inspected their faces and also their black stomachs. Then, a moment later, he turned his attention to this folded up blanket that was sitting near the aunts' heads. He took the blanket and he unfurled it and sort of laid it out in front of him, and then wrapped up inside of this blanket was a small pile of coca leaves. And the curandero, he picked out a few of these leaves and just sort of appeared to scatter them on the blanket. And then he appeared to study the leaves, like he was looking for signs that the leaves were going to give him. And Severina knew that these leaves were telling him what was wrong with her aunts. Finally, the curandero, after looking at these leaves for a bit, he looked up at Severina and told her that her aunts were sick with a blood curse, which meant that the blood flowing through their veins was literally cursed with dark magic. But that wasn't all. The curandero went on, telling Severina that this was actually not just a blood curse, but it was a family blood curse, which meant that someday she, Severina, would also get this curse and very likely die. When Severina heard this, a chill ran through her body and she almost instinctively began scratching at her arms, like she could scratch this curse, out of her skin or something. But the curandero looked at her and just said, "There's nothing you can do. There's no cure for you or your aunts. Your fate and theirs is sealed." A few days later, Severina was back in her own home, in her own kitchen.
So there's nothing that they can do to stop them from basically about to die. Nothing. There's nothing that. Okay.
Making some herbal tea for her aunts who were staying in her guest bedroom. And as she prepared this tea, all she could hear was the sound of her aunts moaning in pain and agony in the other room. So Severina, as quickly as she could, she finished making the tea and then hustled into the guest bedroom. So over the past few days, after leaving the curandero's hut, Severina's aunts had gotten sicker and sicker and sicker. They now couldn't eat anything, and they were constantly so dizzy they could barely even lift their heads up off their pillow. And they both just seemed so weak and so depleted, and their stomachs were still black and bloated, and they had these agonizing stomach cramps basically all the time. It was obvious that they were dying. And their sickness had just been horrifying for Severina to watch on many levels. And so at this point, all Severina was really trying to accomplish was just doing her best to try to make her aunts as comfortable as possible until they died. And so now Severina walked over and she sort of assisted one of the aunts and had them sit up, and she tried to give her some of this tea that she had made. But when her aunt just smelled the herbal tea, she began to dry heave, and Severina jumped out of the way just as her aunt threw up bile all over her own lap. Immediately, the smell of this vomit and the smell of death and just the smell of filth that was filling this room, it just went right up Severina's nostrils, and she had to immediately run from the room and go outside where she vomited just from being so grossed out by being in that room. Severina felt completely overwhelmed by what was happening here. I mean, she obviously was just devastated to see her aunts in this condition. But what was even worse is it was like she was sort of watching what was going to happen to her, and she just couldn't believe it. And so she thought to herself, any day now, I'm going to begin showing symptoms that shows I too have this blood curse, and I'm going to begin withering away and then rotting until I die. And as she had this thought, she found herself again scratching at her arms as if somehow she could rip this illness out of her body before it took her life. Later that same night, after Severina had composed herself and gone back into the house, she had seen that her aunts did need more tea. And so she had left to go get more herbal tea remedies from the curandero. But after getting it and coming back to her house, she found that both of her aunts by this point had died. And the moment she saw them, Severina was overcome with both grief and also fear. Over the next few weeks, as she buried her aunts and grieved for them alongside her family, what she really was thinking about is, when is this blood curse gonna kill me too? And as months turned into years and still she didn't get sick, hey
man, like this shit is diabolical. This shit is diabolical.
Severina began to wonder if maybe the curandero had been wrong. Maybe she didn't have this blood curse. Maybe it wasn't a family curse. But then, 30 years later, in the fall of 2018, when Severina was 57...
30 years later? 30 years later. Now, did I hear that right?
But then, 30 years later, in the fall of 2018, when Severina was 57 years old, she woke up one morning with a stomach cramp, and she also felt very nauseous and a little dizzy. And even though by this point it's been 30 years since her aunts died of this illness, she knew immediately on that morning that the curse had finally arrived and it was now going to kill her. So she forced herself to get out of bed, and then she walked outside to where her husband and her daughter were sitting and having coffee. And she told them what was going on here. And when she told her family that she has this blood curse and there's nothing they can do, her daughter, whose name was Janet, said, "Wait a minute, Mom, go to a doctor." But Severina argued that there was no point because the curandero 30 years ago had told her that nothing would help, and she had watched her aunts die from this very thing. Like, there was nothing she could do. She was doomed. But Janet begged her mother to just forget what you were told 30 years ago. Forget all that and just go see a doctor. Even if they can't do anything, just go. And eventually, Severina relented and said, "Fine, I'll go to the doctor, even though it's not going to help." So later that day, they made the long journey into the nearest city to go see a doctor. At the doctor's office, a doctor took blood samples and ran tests on Severina and listened carefully as she explained the family blood curse. And as Severina and her family waited for the test results to come back, she braced herself because she knew that the doctor would say that, "Sorry, yep, the tests show there's nothing we can do here." And finally, the doctor did come back into the room, and he told Severina that she was right. The curandero had been right. This was blood related. There was something in her blood. And immediately, Severina just kind of collapsed in her chair because she knew what came next was an agonizing death, the same way her aunts had died. But then the doctor told her what this blood curse actually was. And at first, Severina was just really confused by what the doctor was saying. But then, as she's hearing this new information, she remembered all the times when she was younger, when she would reflexively itch her skin when she thought about the blood curse, like she would itch to scratch it out of her body. It was almost like this reflexive thing that she was doing, not realizing that every time she scratched her arms, she was quite literally giving herself the curse. It would turn out the so-called blood curse that Severina's aunts had was actually caused by a parasite. And it was true, Severina also had this blood curse. She too had a parasite in her body that would do the same thing. But Severina's parasite, it went dormant inside of her body for more than 30 years. So no symptoms, nothing for 30 years, just living inside of her skin. In many parts of South America, there is a bug called the vinchuca, which is essentially a type of bed bug. The bug itself is harmless, but there's a parasite that lives in the bug's feces. When the bug bites its victims, and its victims scratch at the bites, they break the surface of their skin and infect themselves with this parasite. Then the parasite can lay dormant in the person's blood, sometimes for decades. Now, a lot of people don't even realize they have this because they never have symptoms ever. But if symptoms do appear without any real treatment, the person suffers organ damage or even dies. Luckily, in Severina's case, when her parasite became active again 30 years later, she was able to receive treatment for the parasite and would make a full recovery.
Wow. So she made it through and got so the parasite really was just inside of her and then I'm guessing they had because how after 30 years it get back active again, bro. Like that is insane to me, bro. Like we learn something new every single day when it comes to this Mr. Ballen content, bro. And like I never knew that. Like this is in what South Africa? Yo. Salute to my people, bro. Salute to my people, bro. South Africa, bro. Shout out to y'all for checking out this video. Like you see, Mr. Ballen got me speechless as he always does, bro. This man is just a genius when it comes to these videos, man. And we love every single one of these joints, bro. So tell me how y'all feel about this, man. If you guys ever experienced anything like that, and make sure you guys are tuned in tomorrow when I drop another one for y'all, man, for Scary Hour, man. And SRC gang, I am out this thing, man. Let's get it.